The air in the pit of judgment reeked of industrial pollution and fear. Kale stood motionless at its edge, his enforcer's uniform a dark silhouette against the harsh artificial lights. The crowd of mandatory spectators shifted nervously in their seats, their faces drawn and pallid in the sickly glow of the arena. This was Justice on Xylos, a brutal public spectacle designed to remind the mining colony's inhabitants of the conglomerate's absolute power. Kale accepted the electro whip from the attendant with practiced indifference. The weapon felt heavier today, though he knew its weight hadn't changed. 20 public punishments this month alone. 20 souls broken for the entertainment and subjugation of masses. He'd learned to go numb, to see only the target points on the back, not the person. It was the only way to survive when your hands were stained with the suffering of others. A dangerous traitor today, enforcer, the attendant whispered, a hint of excitement in his voice. Special instructions from the warden himself. Kale nodded without emotion. Once, he'd been a soldier with ideals, fighting for his homeland before the conglomerate crushed their rebellion. Now he served those who had destroyed everything he loved, his compliance bought with the thin promise that his family would be allowed to live, if working themselves to death in labor camps could be called living. The pit fell silent as the prisoner was brought in. Kale maintained his stone-faced composure, but something shifted in his chest as he saw her. The woman moved with dignity despite her chains and injuries. Her fiery red hair, though matted with blood, framed a face bearing the marks of interrogation but none of defeat. Her emerald eyes surveyed the arena with defiance, not fear. Prisoner 8294, Lyra Navarre. The warden's voice boomed through the amplification system. Convicted of high treason for providing intelligence to terrorist insurgents. Sentence, 50 lashes followed by neural reconditioning. As guards forced her to the whipping post at the center of the pit, Kale caught a glimpse of something on her inner wrist, a small tattoo, partially hidden by the restraints. His breath caught, the spiral flame, the symbol of his people, his tribe from before the conglomerate's invasion. A symbol he hadn't seen since watching his homeland burn. The warden, a corpulent man whose pristine uniform had never seen combat, gestured impatiently. Proceed, enforcer. Chain her and begin the sentence. Kale moved forward mechanically, the electro whip humming with latent energy in his hand. The crowd's silence pressed against him like a physical weight. He reached the post where Lyra stood, her back already exposed, previous scars visible beneath the torn fabric of her prisoner's uniform. Up close, her eyes were even more remarkable, deep emerald with flecks of gold, and utterly fearless. When they locked with his, Kale felt something long dormant stir within him. Conscience, perhaps, or simply humanity. As he reached for the restraints to secure her to the post, she whispered a word in the ancient language of his tribe. Asterisk Marileth star. Honorable. The word struck him like a physical blow. In his mind, memories flashed. His father teaching him the old ways, the oath he'd taken as a young warrior to protect, never to harm the innocent. The warden shifted impatiently. We're waiting, enforcer Kale. Kale's fingers hovered over the restraints, trembling slightly. 20 previous punishments without hesitation, yet now he couldn't move. Is there a problem? The warden's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Kale turned slowly to face him, the restraints still in his hand, unlocked. The arena seemed to hold its breath. I said, "Is there a problem, enforcer?" The warden repeated, louder now, hand moving subtly toward the control panel on his wrist, the one that could activate the compliance chip in Kale's spine with a single command. Yes, Kale said, his voice rough from disuse. There's a problem. The warden's face reddened. Secure the prisoner and carry out the sentence immediately. That's an order. Guards around the perimeter of the pit raised their weapons, uncertain but ready. The crowd began to murmur. Use the whip, enforcer. Now, the warden bellowed. Kale looked down at the electro whip in his hand. The symbol of conglomerate justice, of his own capitulation. With a fluid motion, he adjusted the settings to maximum power, not for striking, but for destruction. As you wish, he said, then slammed the weapon against the stone floor with all his strength. The electro whip shattered in a spectacular explosion of energy and fragments. Blue-white electrical arcs skittered across the ground, causing the front row spectators to shrink back. The warden's face contorted in shock and rage. "Guards, seize him!" he screamed as chaos erupted. Cale moved with the speed and precision of his military training. He spun toward Lyra, using a concealed blade from his wrist sheath to slice through her restraints. As guards rushed forward, he swept her into his arms. She was lighter than expected, her body weakened by captivity, but her spirit unbroken. "Hold on," he murmured as the first shots rang out. Cale dove for the maintenance access tunnel he'd noted during his years of service, a small opening partially hidden behind the punishment post. The crowd was in full panic now, some fleeing, others trapped by the guards attempting to restore order. The confusion gave them precious seconds. The narrow tunnel reeked of rust and decay. Cale moved swiftly through the darkness, guided by memorized mental maps of the facility. Lyra's breathing was labored but steady against his chest. "Why?" she whispered as they navigated the claustrophobic passage. Questions later, he replied, hearing the distant wail of alarms. "If we survive." The tunnel opened into a utility corridor lined with pipes, carrying steam and waste from the facility. Cale set Lyra carefully on her feet, keeping an arm around her waist for support. "Can you walk?" She nodded, determination overriding pain. "Lead the way, enforcer." "Not anymore," he said, removing his official badge and dropping it into a drainage grate. "Just Cale now." They moved through the industrial underbelly of the colony, avoiding the main thoroughfares where emergency broadcasts now displayed their faces on massive screens. "Dangerous fugitives, shoot on sight," flashed in angry red letters beneath their images. Drones buzzed overhead as they darted from shadow to shadow, using the polluted steam vents for cover. The colony was a maze of contradictions, gleaming conglomerate technology juxtaposed against the crumbling infrastructure of a world being stripped of resources with little investment in return. In a narrow alley between processing plants, they encountered their first patrol. Two guards, weapons drawn, appeared suddenly around corner. Cale pushed Lyra behind him and moved before the guards could raise an alarm. His fist connected with the first guard's throat while his legs swept the second off his feet. Both were unconscious in seconds, their comms disabled before they could transmit their location. "You didn't kill them," Lyra observed as Cale collected their weapons and identification cards. "No more death than necessary," he replied, handing her a small pulse pistol. "Can you use this?" "Better than you might think." Something like a smile flickered across her face. They continued moving deeper into the industrial zone, away from the colony's center. As night fell, the harsh artificial lights cast long shadows that provided additional cover. Cale led them to an abandoned filtration facility he'd discovered during past security sweeps, a place officially condemned but structurally sound enough to provide temporary shelter. Inside, the air was stale but cleaner than the toxic atmosphere outside. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow. Cale helped Lyra to a relatively clean corner where defunct control panels provided some concealment from the entrance. "We should be safe here for a few hours," he said, checking the perimeter. "They'll be focusing on the transit hubs and checkpoints first." Lyra slid down against the wall, exhaustion finally claiming its toll. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, revealing the true extent of her injuries. In the blue emergency lighting, her skin looked almost translucent, the bruises dark islands on a pale sea. Cale found a sealed maintenance kit and returned to her side. "I need to look at your wounds." She regarded him warily, but nodded. Strange to have an enforcer playing medic. "Former enforcer," he corrected, cleaning a particularly nasty gash on her arm with antiseptic from the kit. "And before that, a soldier." Field medicine was part of training. Lyra winced as the antiseptic stung, but didn't pull away. "Why did you do it?" "You had everything to lose." Cale worked in silence for a moment, methodically addressing her injuries. "I've lost everything already," he finally said. "I just hadn't admitted it until I saw that tattoo." She glanced down at the spiral flame on her wrist. You recognized it. The Hilaran tribe. My people. Before the conglomerate burned our world and scattered the survivors. My mother was Hilaran, Lyra said softly. She died in the resistance 5 years ago. I took up her work. Kale finished bandaging a wound on her shoulder. What work exactly? She studied him, calculating how much to reveal. I'm an engineer by training. I help the resistance access conglomerate systems, redirect resources, intercept communications. A hacker, an information specialist, she corrected with a hint of pride. They caught me trying to access containment protocols at the Eastern Mining Complex. The one with the radiation leaks they've been covering up? Lyra nodded. Thousands of workers exposed. I was trying to get proof, force a shutdown. Kale sat back, processing this information. For years, he'd survived by not thinking, not questioning. Now questions flooded his mind faster than he could suppress them. A distant explosion rocked the building, dust falling from the ceiling. Lyra tensed. Patrols are getting closer, Kale said, moving to the grimy window. Through layers of industrial grime, he could see searchlights sweeping nearby streets. We can't stay here long. We need to get to the Old Mines District, Lyra said, struggling to stand. I have a contact there, someone who can help us reach the main resistance cell. The Old Mines? That's suicide. The place is crawling with gangs, mutated wildlife, and collapse hazards. It's also the place the conglomerate has least control, she countered. Our best chance. Kale knew she was right, even as he calculated the risks. Their supplies were minimal: 2 stolen pulse pistols, a handful of nutrition packets from the maintenance kit, a canteen half full of water. Lyra's wounds needed proper treatment, and the colony-wide manhunt would only intensify. We'll move at midnight, he decided. Use the darkness and shift change confusion. Lyra nodded, then winced, her hand go to her side. You're worse than you're letting on, Kale observed. I'll manage, she said through gritted teeth. Kale frowned, noticing a spreading darkness on her makeshift bandages. Let me see. Reluctantly, she lifted the edge of her tattered uniform. A deep laceration curved along her ribs, the edges angry and inflamed. This needs more than I can do here, he said grimly. Infection is already setting in. Then we need to move faster, Lyra replied, determination hardening her voice. My contact can help with this too. Kale nodded, helping her into a more comfortable position to rest. Sleep if you can. I'll keep watch. As Lyra drifted into uneasy slumber, Kale contemplated their situation. In a single act of defiance, he'd thrown away everything: safety, stability, the protection his service had bought for his family in the labor camps. Yet for the first time in years, he felt something like purpose stirring in his hollowed chest. He looked at the woman sleeping fitfully beside him, her red hair a shock of color in the dismal blue light. She fought for something beyond survival. Perhaps that was worth fighting for too. The hours until midnight passed in tense silence. Kale dozed intermittently, decades of military training allowing him to wake instantly at any sound. Lyra's fever worsened, her skin alternating between burning hot and alarmingly cold. When the time came, he gently roused her. We need to move. She came awake instantly, eyes clear despite her fever. I'm ready. The journey from their temporary haven to the Old Mines District would take them through 3 security sectors, each more heavily patrolled than the last. They moved like ghosts through maintenance tunnels and abandoned sewage systems, avoiding the main thoroughfares entirely. At the first security checkpoint, they waited as a massive cargo transport approached. Kale, using knowledge from his enforcer days, timed their dash perfectly to coincide with sensor blind spots. They clung to the undercarriage of the lumbering vehicle, enduring its toxic exhaust and bone-rattling vibrations until they were through. The second checkpoint proved more challenging. Drone patrols had been doubled, their thermal scanners sweeping methodically across every shadow and crevice. Lyra, despite her weakened state, proved invaluable here. She produced a small device from a hidden pocket in her boot. Thermal scrambler, she explained. Short range, short duration. When I activate it, we'll have 60 seconds before the system compensates. The device worked, creating just enough confusion in the drone sensors for them to slip through. But the effort cost Lyra dearly. Her fever spiked, and Kale was forced to carry her through the industrial waste canal that served as their path to the third sector. The final checkpoint separated the functioning colony from the abandoned mining zone. Here the conglomerate maintained a physical wall with armed guards, not to keep people out of the dangerous old mines, but to prevent the desperate from fleeing there beyond their control. They observed the pattern of guards from the relative safety of a defunct ventilation shaft. 3 guards, rotating positions every 15 minutes, with automated turrets covering the blind spots. "We can't fight through," Kale murmured. "And we can't sneak past those turrets." Lyra, propped against the wall, nodded toward a small figure approaching the checkpoint. "We won't have to." A child, no more than 12, approached the guards carrying a basket of what appeared to be food containers. The guards greeted the child with casual familiarity. "Delivery boy," Lyra explained weakly. "Resistance. Sympathizer. His family runs a food stall that serves the guards. I recognize him from briefings." "How does that help us?" "Watch." The boy handed out containers to the guards, engaging them in conversation that drew them slightly away from their posts. As he left, he accidentally dropped something near the control panel for the turrets. "Our signal," Lyra whispered. "He's looped the security feed for 60 seconds. That's not enough time to. Is if we don't try to go through the checkpoint," she interrupted. "The drainage culvert to the right. It bypasses the wall completely. The boy's distraction will keep the guards from noticing us enter it." Kale reassessed the situation and saw she was right. The narrow drainage passage would be a tight fit, but possible. He gathered Lyra in his arms again, her body frighteningly light and hot with fever. "Hold on," he whispered. They made their dash as the boy's distraction reached its peak, a dropped container that splattered food across one guard's uniform. Cursing and laughter covered the sound of their movement as Kale slid them into the narrow culvert. The passage was worse than it appeared, tight, slick with unidentifiable substances, and periodically crossed by rusted metal bars. Kale navigated it by touch alone, Lyra's labored breathing his only companion in the absolute darkness. When they finally emerged on the other side, the environment had changed dramatically. The Old Mines District had once been the heart of the colony, before more profitable veins were discovered elsewhere. Now it stood abandoned by the conglomerate, but not uninhabited. The desperate, the criminal, and those fleeing conglomerate control made this their territory. Crumbling structures loomed like skeletons against the polluted sky. The ambient light was significantly dimmer here, with only scattered functioning illumination panels casting pools of sickly light amid vast stretches of shadow. "Where to now?" Kale asked, setting Lyra carefully on her feet. She swayed, but remained standing, scanning their surroundings with feverish intensity. "Northwest Quadrant. Old Processing Center. My contact operates from the sublevel maintenance hub." They moved more cautiously now. The threats here were different, not the organized, predictable conglomerate forces, but the unpredictable dangers of a lawless zone. Twice they froze at sounds of movement, once hiding as a gang of scavengers passed, their bodies modified with crude technological enhancements. In a forgotten plaza littered with industrial debris, they encountered something worse. A creature skittered into their path, once human, but twisted by radiation or chemical exposure into something monstrous. Its skin was translucent, internal organs visible and malformed. It regarded them with 2 intelligent eyes before retreating into the darkness. "Mutation from the Eastern Complex," Lyra murmured. "More evidence of what the conglomerate is hiding." They pressed on, Lyra growing weaker with each step. Kale supported more of her weight, concern mounting as her skin grew hotter and her breathing more labored. The processing center rose before them like a cathedral of industry, a massive complex of pipes, towers, and conveyor systems, now still and silent. They found an entrance through a collapsed wall, navigating by the dim glow of emergency lighting that had somehow survived years of neglect. "Down," Lyra directed, pointing to a maintenance hatch partially concealed by fallen debris. 3 levels below. The descent was treacherous. Corroded ladders and unstable platforms threatened to collapse beneath them. At one point, Kale was forced to jump a gap while carrying Lyra, landing hard on a catwalk that groaned ominously beneath their weight. The sublevel was a maze of narrow corridors and equipment rooms. Lyra directed with increasingly faint instructions until they reached a sealed door marked with maintenance codes. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, she whispered. Kale complied. Silence followed, then a faint scraping sound from behind the door. A viewport slid open, and suspicious eyes peered through. We're closed, a gruff voice stated. Lyra raised her head with effort. The flame burns in darkness. The eyes widened slightly, taking in her appearance, then Kale's. You brought an enforcer here? The viewport began to slide shut. Former enforcer, Kale corrected. I broke her out of the pit. The viewport paused. Prove it. Check the broadcasts, Kale replied tersely. Our faces are everywhere. She needs medical attention now. After a tense moment, bolts slid back and the door opened just enough to admit them. Inside was a surprisingly well-equipped space, part living quarters, part communication center, part medical facility. A man with a cybernetic eye and arm gestured them toward a warm medical cot. I'm Talon, he said, already gathering supplies. Put her here, as Kale gently laid Lyra on the cot, the door sealed behind them with multiple locks engaging. You've brought hell down on all our heads, Talon remarked, scanning Lyra's vital signs with a medical device. The entire colony's on lockdown. Warden Krell himself is leading the search. Krell, Kale's face hardened at the name of the pit's commander, has a personal vendetta now. Talon nodded, administering medication to Lyra through an injector. You humiliated him in front of the whole colony. That's not something a man like Krell forgives. Will she be all right? Kale asked, watching Lyra's face intently. Infection's bad, but I've seen worse. Talon worked methodically, cleaning and treating her wounds with surprising skill. What's your plan? Because you can't stay here long. My position is already compromised. Had 2 sweeps through this sector today. Kale had been operating on instinct since the pit, focused only on the next step of escape. Now, with a moment to think, the enormity of their situation settled on him. Is there a resistance cell that can take us in? Talon gave him a measuring look. There might be, but they're not in the habit of welcoming enforcers. I told you. Former enforcer. Yes, Talon cut him off. But do you know how many resistance fighters you sent to reconditioning? How many died in the pit after you administered justice? Your change of heart is noted, but forgiveness isn't guaranteed. The words hit Kale like physical blows. He had no defense to offer. He could have kept going. Lyra's voice, weak but clear, interrupted. He could have been safe. He chose to save me instead. Because you're Hilarion, Talon observed. Like him. Because it was right, Kale said quietly. Talon finished treating Lyra's wounds and stepped back. She needs rest. The antibiotics will need time to work. A soft chime from one of Talon's devices drew his attention. His expression darkened as he checked a screen. Patrols entering this sector. Heavy units. They're being methodical this time. Kale moved to the viewport, seeing distant lights sweeping through the abandoned complex. How much time? He asked. Not enough, Talon replied grimly. And she can't be moved yet. Decision crystallized in Kale's mind. Then I'll draw them away. Give her time to recover. That's suicide, Talon said flatly. Better one than both. Kale replied, checking the charge on his stolen pulse pistol. No, Lyra struggled to sit up. We stay together. This isn't a debate, Kale said firmly. You're the one who matters, the one with connections to the resistance, with skills they need. I'm just a soldier who took too long to remember his conscience. Talon watched this exchange with shrewd assessment. After a moment, he moved to a hidden compartment in the wall, retrieving a small data chip. There's another way, he said, if you're both willing to risk it. He held up the chip, clearance codes, and coordinates. There's a long-range shuttle in Maintenance Bay 7E of the Eastern Complex, the one Lyra was investigating. It's being prepared for a conglomerate executive extraction tomorrow, but it's operational now. With these codes, you could take it. Off-world, Kale asked, stunned by the possibility. Talon nodded. To Vera Station. The Resistance has a presence there. They could get you further if needed. Hope and suspicion warred in Kale's mind. Why offer this now? Because I was saving it for myself, Talon admitted. My cover's blown regardless after helping you. But I can still create a distraction while you two make for the shuttle. We can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Talon slipped the chip into Lyra's hand. The Resistance needs her alive more than me. The information in her head about the Eastern Complex could save thousands. Before either could respond, proximity alarms blared. Talon cursed, moving quickly to his monitoring equipment. They found us. Thermal scanners must have picked up the medical equipment. He began activating a series of switches. There's a maintenance shaft behind that panel. It leads to the old transit tunnels. Follow them east for 2 kilometers, then look for access ladder J-17. It will bring you up near the Eastern Complex perimeter. Kale helped Lyra to her feet. The treatment had already improved her condition, though she was far from fully recovered. What about you? She asked Talon. He smiled grimly, revealing modified teeth. I'll give them something to chase. From another hidden compartment, he retrieved an impressive array of explosives. Been saving these for a special occasion. The pounding on the door began, heavy conglomerate assault units attempting to breach the reinforced entrance. Go, Talon urged, already wiring detonators. You have maybe 3 minutes before they're through. Kale supported Lyra to the hidden panel, which slid open at Talon's command. Before entering the passage, Lyra turned back. Thank you, she said. Simply. Talon nodded once. Make it count. The maintenance shaft was narrow and poorly lit, but mercifully straight. They moved as quickly as Lyra's condition would allow, putting distance between themselves and Talon's hideout. Behind them, muffled shouting and the whine of cutting tools penetrated the walls. Then came the explosion, massive enough to shake the entire structure around them. Dust and debris showered down as lights flickered. He didn't plan to survive that, Lyra said softly. No, Kale agreed, steadying her as they continued forward. He didn't. The transit tunnels were pitch black when they reached them, forcing Kale to activate the emergency light on their stolen comms unit. The weak beam revealed abandoned tracks stretching into darkness, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. They followed Talon's directions, moving east through the oppressive darkness. Occasionally strange sounds echoed around them, scurrying movements or distant metallic groans. Once, something large splashed in flooded sections they were forced to wade through, the water reaching their knees and smelling of chemicals. Tell me about her, Kale said as they walked, partly to distract Lyra from pain, partly from genuine curiosity. Your mother, the Hilarion resistance fighter. Lyra's face softened in the harsh light. She was a navigator originally, knew the stars like old friends. After the invasion, she used that knowledge to smuggle refugees, then supplies, then information. Pride colored her voice. She taught me everything. How to hide, how to fight, how to remember who we are even when the world tries to make us forget. My father was similar, Kale said quietly. Warrior caste, but a teacher at heart. He died in the first wave of the invasion. The memory, long suppressed, surfaced with surprising clarity. My mother and sisters were taken to the labor camps. I joined the conglomerate military to protect them, to ensure they received preferred treatment. Did they? Kale's silence was answer enough. The conglomerate never honors its bargains, Lyra said, gentler than he deserved. I know that now, he replied. I think I always knew, but admitting it meant facing what I'd become. They walked in thoughtful silence until reaching the access ladder Talon had described. It rose into darkness above them, rusted rungs disappearing into a maintenance shaft. Can you climb? Kale asked, noting how Lyra still favored her injured side. Do I have a choice? She replied with grim humor. You go first. If I fall, you can catch me. The climb was arduous. Several rungs broke under their weight, creating heart-stopping moments of scrambling for purchase. By the time they reached the top, both were breathing heavily, clothes soaked with sweat and filthy water from the tunnels below. The access hatch opened onto a service corridor that appeared remarkably well-maintained compared to the abandoned tunnels. Emergency lighting functioned properly, and the air, though still tainted with industrial chemicals, was fresher. "We're in the Eastern Complex," Lyra whispered, recognition in her eyes. "I infiltrated through a different route last time, but I recognized the sector markings." Kale checked the stolen comms unit, which displayed a partial schematic of the facility. "Maintenance Bay 7, you should be 2 levels up, north quadrant." They moved cautiously through the corridors, encountering surprisingly few personnel. Most areas appeared automated, with robotic maintenance units going about their programmed tasks, easily avoided. "Something's wrong," Kale murmured as they approached a junction. "Security's too light." After what happened at the pit, every conglomerate facility should be on high alert. Lyra nodded, tension evident in her posture. They're either focusing resources elsewhere, or it's a trap, Kale finished. They proceeded with heightened caution, using service ducts and maintenance crawl spaces to avoid main corridors whenever possible. At one point, they were forced to hide within a wall recess as a patrol passed, their armor bearing the distinctive insignia of Warden Krell's personal guard. "He is leading the hunt himself," Kale whispered once the patrol had passed. "He knows this complex well," Lyra replied. "I encountered him during my infiltration. He oversees the containment protocols I was investigating." This new information deepened Kale's concern. If Krell was personally involved in covering up the radiation leaks, his pursuit went beyond wounded pride. They represented a threat to his position, perhaps even his life if the conglomerate discovered his involvement in a potential scandal. They reached the access corridor to Maintenance Bay 7E without further encounters, which only heightened Kale's suspicion. The bay doors were sealed but unguarded. "Too easy," he murmured, studying the control panel. Lyra examined the security system. Standard conglomerate encryption. The clearance code should work, but accessing the panel will alert security, Kale finished. "We'll have minutes at most once we open it." "Less," Lyra corrected grimly. "Look," she pointed to nearly invisible sensor nodes around the doorframe. "Motion and thermal detection. They'll know the instant we approach, codes or not." Kale considered their options, none of them good. "Is there another way into the bay?" Lyra pulled up the schematic on their comms unit, studying it intently. "Possibly. Maintenance bays this size usually have emergency access routes in case of decompression or fire." Her fingers traced possible pathways. "Here, ventilation system connects to a secondary maintenance corridor. It might bypass the main sensors." The ventilation access required removing a service panel and navigating another claustrophobic tunnel, this one actively circulating air through the complex. The powerful fans forced them to time their movements carefully, pressing against the sides of the shaft during active cycles. The secondary corridor Lyra had identified was little more than a crawl space between structural supports, forcing them to move on hands and knees. It terminated in a small junction box that, when carefully removed, revealed the interior of Maintenance Bay 7E. The sight that greeted them confirmed their hopes. A sleek shuttle occupied the center of the bay, clearly prepped for departure. Maintenance droids performed final checks, while a single technician monitored systems from a console nearby. "One person," Kale whispered. "That's manageable." They waited for the technician to move to the far side of the shuttle before slipping from their hiding place. Kale moved swiftly, incapacitating the man with a precise strike before he could raise an alarm. Lyra immediately took his place at the console, inserting Talon's data chip. Systems accepting codes, she reported as displays turned from red to green. Pre-flight sequence already initiated. Her fingers flew across the controls. Charging engines, bypassing automated departure protocols. Kale secured the unconscious technician, then checked the bay doors. "How long?" 3 minutes to achieve minimum thrust capability, Lyra replied, not looking up from the console. "Bay doors are on a separate system." "I'll need to." An alarm suddenly blared throughout the complex, cutting her off. Red emergency lights began to pulse. "They've found us." Kale moved to the bay's interior controls, scanning for door operations. "Can we launch without full power?" "Not if we want to reach Vera's station," Lyra replied tensely. "We need at least 80% charge to break atmosphere and achieve proper trajectory." The bay doors began to cycle closed, an automatic security response to the alarm. "Override it," Kale shouted. "Trying." Lyra's hands moved frantically across the console. The command structure is different than standard conglomerate protocols. The bay doors continued their inexorable movement as the shuttle's engines whined, building power. Through the narrowing gap, Kale could see armed figures assembling in the exterior corridor. 60 seconds to minimum launch capability, Lyra announced. "But the doors will be sealed before then." Kale spotted an emergency override panel near the main doors. "Keep working on the launch sequence. I'll handle the doors." He sprinted across the bay, pulse pistol ready. The manual override required physical authentication, a conglomerate security implant they didn't possess. Instead, Kale aimed his weapon at the control junction box adjacent to the panel and fired 3 precise shots. Sparks erupted as circuits overloaded. The bay doors shuddered, then stopped moving, frozen half-closed. "That's our window," he called, running back to the shuttle. "How much longer?" 30 seconds, Lyra replied, initiating the final launch sequence. "We'll have minimal guidance capabilities until full systems come online, but it should be enough." The first shots hit the shuttle's exterior as conglomerate forces breached the peripheral defenses of the bay. The armored hull absorbed the initial barrage, but it wouldn't withstand concentrated fire for long. "Get inside," Lyra called, abandoning the external console and racing for the shuttle's entry ramp. Kale provided covering fire, forcing the incoming troops to seek shelter. A familiar figure appeared at the forefront of the assault team. Warden Krell himself, his pristine uniform replaced by combat armor, his face contorted with rage. "Enforcer Kale," he bellowed over the alarm klaxons. "Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Continue this treason, and I promise you suffering beyond imagination." Kale's response was another burst of pulse fire that sent the warden diving for cover. With the enemy momentarily suppressed, he sprinted for the shuttle, leaping onto the entry ramp as it began to retract. Inside, Lyra had already taken the pilot's seat, her hands dancing. Across the controls with practiced precision, the shuttle's engines roared to full power, the entire craft vibrating with barely contained energy. "Hold on to something," she warned as Kale sealed the entry hatch. "This launch won't be smooth." The shuttle lurched forward, scraping against the half-closed bay doors with a horrific screech of metal on metal. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as external sensors registered damage. But Lyra pushed on, forcing the craft through the narrowed opening. They burst free of the maintenance bay into open air, immediately climbing at a steep angle that pressed them back into their seats with crushing force. Through the viewport, Kale watched the mining colony fall away beneath them, a cancerous growth of industry and exploitation on the planet's surface. Defensive turrets on the complex's exterior swiveled to target them, energy beams slicing through the air around the shuttle. Lyra executed a series of evasive maneuvers, her face set in grim concentration despite the pain such movements surely caused her injuries. "Atmosphere breach in 30 seconds, she announced, voice tight with strain. "Brace for turbulence." The shuttle shuddered violently as it punched through Xylos's polluted atmospheric layers. Alarms blared, warning of exterior temperature spikes and minor hull breaches. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the craft might tear itself apart before reaching space. Then suddenly smoothness. The violent shaking ceased as they broke free of the planet's gravitational well. The view outside, transforming from toxic clouds to the star-speckled blackness of space. "We made it," Lyra breathed, slumping slightly in her seat as automated systems took over maintaining their trajectory. Kale moved to the rear viewport, watching as Xylos diminished behind them. The world that had been his prison for so long, now nothing more than a poisoned marble suspended in the void. Are they pursuing? Lyra asked, checking sensor readings. Not yet, Kale replied. But they will. The conglomerate won't let this insult stand. He returned to the cockpit, taking the co-pilot's seat. Only now, with immediate danger past, did he fully notice the shuttle's luxurious appointments. Plush seating, premium life support systems, even a food synthesizer programmed with gourmet options. All for the comfort of some high-ranking conglomerate executive who would never experience them. Course set for Vera Station, Lyra confirmed, studying the navigation display. Estimated arrival in 17 hours. She winced as she shifted position, her hand going to her side. You need rest, Kale said, noting the fresh blood seeping through her bandages. The strain of the launch reopened your wounds. She didn't argue, which concerned him more than the blood. Medical supplies should be in the rear compartment. Standard conglomerate emergency kit. Kale found the supplies exactly where she'd predicted. Impressively comprehensive for an executive vessel. He returned to find Lyra had engaged the autopilot and was attempting to move from her seat. Let me help, he said, supporting her weight as she stood. Still playing medic? She asked, with a ghost of a smile that didn't hide her pain. Still a soldier, following the mission, he replied, guiding her to a passenger couch that converted into a medical bed. And right now, the mission is keeping you alive. As he redressed her wounds with proper medical supplies, Kale felt the weight of everything they'd left behind and everything that lay ahead. Why Vera Station? What's waiting for us there? Lyra's eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but her voice remained clear. A choice. The Resistance has operatives there who can either help us disappear into the outer colonies or integrate us into their network. And which would you choose? Kale asked, securing the final bandage. She studied him with those remarkable emerald eyes that had first awakened his conscience. I've been fighting too long to stop now. The evidence I gathered about the Eastern Complex, the radiation poisoning of thousands of workers, that was just one atrocity among countless others. The conglomerate won't fall because 2 people escaped it. No, Kale agreed. But every resistance begins with someone refusing to obey. Something shifted in Lyra's expression, respect, perhaps, or simple recognition of a shared understanding. You were a soldier before you were an enforcer. What made you fight in the beginning, before the conglomerate broke you? The question struck deeper than she could know. Kale was silent for a long moment, memories he'd suppressed for years resurfacing with painful clarity. Belief, he finally said, in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, in standing against those who used power to oppress rather than uplift. He looked down at his hands that had carried out conglomerate justice for too long. I lost sight of that when survival became my only goal. And now? Lyra asked softly. Now I remember, he replied, meeting her gaze directly. Too late for many, perhaps, but not too late to choose differently going forward. She reached out, her hand finding his. It's never too late to reclaim your honor, Marileth. The word from his tribal language, honor-bound, the same word she'd whispered in the pit that had broken through his carefully constructed walls of apathy. Rest, he said gently, emotional barriers threatening to crumble entirely. We have hours before reaching Varus. I'll monitor our course. Lyra nodded, exhaustion finally claiming her as the medical injections took effect. Kale returned to the cockpit, checking systems and scanning for pursuit vessels. So far, their escape appeared clean, the conglomerate likely scrambling to organize a proper response to such an unprecedented theft. In the quietness of the shuttle's controlled environment, with only the soft hum of engines and life support systems as company, Kale allowed himself to process everything that had transpired. In less than a day, he had transformed from enforcer to fugitive, from instrument of oppression to rebel. The certainty he felt about this change surprised him. Not regret or fear, but a sense of rightness that had been absent for years. He thought of his family in the labor camps, wondering if news of his treason would affect their already miserable treatment. The guilt was a physical weight, yet he recognized that his compliance had never truly protected them. The conglomerate's promises were as toxic as Xylos's atmosphere, designed to keep the subjugated in line while slowly killing them anyway. Hours passed in contemplative silence. Kale monitored their flight path, checked on Lyra's sleeping form periodically, and familiarized himself with the shuttle systems. The luxury vessel was well equipped for extended travel, with defensive capabilities that might prove crucial if they encountered conglomerate patrols near Varys. He was studying the weapons systems when an anomalous reading on the scanner caught his attention. A vessel had appeared at the edge of detection range, its trajectory suggesting deliberate pursuit rather than coincidental travel. Already, he muttered, enhancing the scan. The pursuing craft was smaller than their shuttle, likely a rapid response security vessel dispatched from another facility, not directly from Xylos. The pursuing vessel accelerated, confirming Kale's suspicion that they'd been detected. He quickly ran calculations. They could outrun the security craft to Varys Station, but not by much. The margin for error was uncomfortably slim. He moved to wake Lyra, touching her shoulder gently. "We have company." She came awake instantly, years of resistance training evident in her immediate alertness. "How close?" "Not close enough to engage yet, but gaining. Looks like a conglomerate interceptor-class vessel. Faster than us, but less armored." Lyra moved to the cockpit despite her injuries, studying the scanner data. "We can't outrun them to Varys," she concluded, reaching the same assessment Kale had. "We need alternatives." She examined the navigation charts, searching for options. "Here," she finally said, indicating a small planetary body in a nearby system. "Meridian Outpost. Independent mining operation, no formal conglomerate presence. We could lose our pursuit there, maybe arrange alternative transport to Varys." "Smugglers and pirates," Kale observed, recognizing the outpost's classification. "People who don't ask questions if the price is right," Lyra countered. "And this shuttle is valuable enough to buy significant cooperation." Kale considered their options, which were admittedly few. "How do we know the outpost won't simply turn us in for the reward the conglomerate has undoubtedly posted by now?" "We don't," Lyra admitted. "But Meridian has a history of resistance sympathies. The independent operators there have suffered conglomerate expansion into their territories for years. Many have personal reasons to resist cooperation." The pursuing vessel continued to gain ground, now visible on long-range visual scanners. Decision time was running out. "Meridian it is," Kale decided, altering their course. "But we'll need a plan for when we arrive." Lyra nodded, already accessing the shuttle's database for information about the outpost. Meridian was originally established by corporate deserters, engineers and miners who stole equipment to set up their own operation. They maintain a defensive perimeter against conglomerate incursion, which means they'll be suspicious of an incoming conglomerate executive shuttle, Kale noted. "Yes, but they'll also recognize its value," Lyra replied. She opened a communications channel, adjusting settings to mask their identity and origin point. "I'll transmit on resistance frequencies. There are protocols that might get us a reception rather than immediate hostility." The pursuing vessel accelerated again, now close enough that its class identification appeared on their scanners. A conglomerate Hunter-class patrol ship, designed specifically for pursuit and capture of fugitive vessels. "They're charging weapons," Kale warned, reading the energy signatures. "Engaging defensive systems," Lyra responded, activating the shuttle's shields. "Full power to engines." The shuttle surged forward, straining its propulsion systems to maximum output. The sudden acceleration pressed them back into their seats as warning lights flashed across the control panel. "We're overloading the engines," Kale observed tensely. "We just need enough distance to make the jump to the Meridian system," Lyra replied, hands flying across the navigation controls. "Calculating coordinates now." The first warning shot from the Hunter flashed past their port side, a deliberate miss designed to encourage surrender rather than to damage. "Conglomerate vessel YL 479 to stolen shuttle." A voice crackled over the emergency channel. "Power down immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." Lyra ignored the transmission, focused entirely on finalizing their jump calculations. "Ready in 10 seconds." Another shot, closer this time, rocked the shuttle as it grazed their shields. Systems fluctuated momentarily before stabilizing. 5 seconds, Lyra announced, her voice steady despite the danger. The hunter closed the gap rapidly, now close enough that Kale could make out details of its predatory design through the viewport. Weapon arrays fully deployed, boarding mechanisms primed. "Jump now," he urged as the hunter moved into optimal firing position. Lyra activated the jump sequence, just as another shot struck their shields directly. The shuttle shuddered violently, then elongated impossibly as space folded around them. The stars blurred into streaks of light, and the hunter vanished from their sensors. For several nauseating seconds, reality itself seemed to compress and expand simultaneously. Then, with a final lurch, the shuttle emerged into a new star system, Meridian's orange-red sun dominating the viewport. "Did we lose them?" Kale asked, checking damaged scanner systems. "Temporarily," Lyra replied, already plotting their approach to the outpost. "They'll calculate our jump trajectory and follow, but we have maybe 30 minutes head start." Meridian Outpost came into view as they approached the system's third planetary body, a heavily cratered moon orbiting a gas giant. The outpost itself was a sprawling collection of connected habitation domes, mining operations, and defensive installations, all nestled within a massive crater that provided natural protection. "I'm broadcasting on resistance channels," Lyra said, transmitting their approach codes. "Let's hope someone friendly is listening." Long seconds passed with no response. The shuttle continued its approach, now close enough to see individual structures and the movement of small craft around the outpost's docking areas. Finally, the comm system crackled to life. "Unidentified shuttle, you're broadcasting resistance codes from a conglomerate executive vessel. Explain immediately or be vaporized." Lyra leaned forward, her voice clear and firm as she responded. "This is Lyra Navarre, resistance operative from Xylo's colony. We've stolen this vessel during escape and are being pursued by conglomerate forces, requesting emergency docking and protection in exchange for technology and information." Another pause, then, "Navarre? Mira Navarre's daughter?" Lyra's eyes widened at the mention of her mother's name. "Yes. Who am I speaking with?" "Someone who owes your mother his life," the voice replied, softer now. "Approach docking bay 7, eastern quadrant. Come in fast, and we'll close shields behind you. Your pursuit is already appearing on our long-range scanners." Relief washed over Lyra's face as she adjusted their course toward the specified bay. "Thank you." Kale studied her profile, noting the emotional impact of this unexpected connection. "Your mother's reputation reaches far. She saved many people during the early resistance," Lyra replied, expertly guiding the shuttle toward the indicated docking port. "I never knew who all of them were." As they approached Meridian, defensive installations swiveled to track their movement, a precaution despite the clearance they'd received. The outpost was an impressive sight up close, its haphazard construction belying sophisticated technology and strategic design. They descended toward docking bay 7, a protected hangar nestled deep within the crater wall. Massive shield doors stood open to receive them, with warning lights indicating imminent closure. "Coming in hot," Lyra warned, pushing the damaged shuttle to perform one final high-speed approach. They cleared the shield perimeter with meters to spare, the protective energy barrier snapping closed behind them as they decelerated harshly into the hangar space. Landing struts deployed automatically, cushioning their touchdown on the deck with a jarring thud. Armed figures immediately surrounded the shuttle, weapons raised but not directly threatening. As the engines powered down and external systems stabilized, Kale and Lyra exchanged a look of cautious optimism. "Ready?" he asked, standing beside the exit hatch. "As I'll ever be," she replied, rising with a wince. Her wounds had improved but still caused obvious pain. Kale opened the hatch, hands raised non-threateningly as the ramp extended. The armed welcoming committee tensed but held position as they emerged from the shuttle. A tall, broad-shouldered man with extensive cybernetic enhancements stepped forward from a group. His left arm and eye were clearly mechanical, and scarring suggested further modifications beneath his clothing. Despite the intimidating appearance, his expression softened visibly upon seeing Lyra. "By the stars, you look just like her," he said, lowering his weapon completely. "You knew my mother well?" Lyra asked, still maintaining a cautious distance. "She pulled me from a conglomerate reconditioning facility when no one else would risk it," the man replied. "I'm Darius Reed, security chief for Meridian Outpost." He gestured to their surroundings. "Welcome to the closest thing to freedom in this sector, though I'm afraid it may become significantly less free very soon." He nodded toward a large tactical display showing the approaching hunter vessel. "Your conglomerate friends will reach our perimeter in approximately 20 minutes. Can your defenses hold them off?" Kale asked, professional assessment evident in his tone. Reed sized Kale up with his cybernetic eye, which whirred softly as it scanned. "Former conglomerate military," he observed. "Enforcer division, by the uniform fragments. Interesting company you're keeping these days, Navarre." "He saved my life," Lyra stated simply. "Broke me out of the pit of judgment on Xylos at great personal cost." Reed's eyebrows rose. "The incident that's flooding conglomerate channels? That was you too." He laughed suddenly, a surprisingly warm sound from such an imposing figure. "Well, anyone who causes that much trouble for the conglomerate deserves at least temporary sanctuary." His expression grew serious again as he glanced at the tactical display. "As for your question, yes, our defenses can handle a single hunter-class vessel, but they rarely hunt alone for long. Where one finds prey, others will follow." He gestured for them to follow him deeper into the facility. "Kulme, our medical team will tend to your injuries while we discuss options. Your shuttle is impressive, valuable enough to buy considerable cooperation from our community." As they walked, Reed explained the nature of Meridian Outpost, a haven for those seeking escape from conglomerate control, operating on a principle of mutual benefit rather than altruism. Resources were scarce, but freedom abundant, at least compared to conglomerate worlds. They passed through corridors bustling with activity, populated by a diverse collection of individuals, former miners, engineers, pilots, even a few who clearly came from more privileged backgrounds before choosing exile. Many bore the scars or modifications resulting from conglomerate labor or punishment. The medical facility was surprisingly well equipped, a testament to the outpost priorities. A doctor with delicate mechanical hands examined Lyra's wounds with professional efficiency, applying advanced treatments that outclassed even the shuttle's medical supplies. "You'll need rest," the doctor advised, finishing the procedure, "but you'll heal completely with proper care." Reed, who had waited nearby during the examination, now approached with a data tablet. "Your hunter friend has taken up position just outside our defensive perimeter. They're broadcasting demands for your surrender." "Expected," Kale replied. "Standard procedure would be to maintain position while calling for reinforcements." "Which gives us some time," Reed agreed. "But not much. The conglomerate maintains a military outpost in the neighboring system. If they deploy from there, we could have a battle fleet on our doorstep within 24 hours. Lyra sat up carefully, testing her newly treated injuries. "Then we need to be gone before then." "Precisely," Reed nodded. "Which brings us to the matter of your shuttle. It's valuable, but conspicuous. Every conglomerate vessel in the sector will be looking for it. We need alternative transport to Vera Station," Lyra stated directly. Reed's expression turned contemplative. "Varus is heavily monitored. The conglomerate maintains a significant presence there, despite the station's technically independent status. The Resistance has operatives there," Lyra insisted. "People who can help us disappear or connect us with larger cells." "True," Reed acknowledged. "But getting there undetected is the challenge." He studied them both for a moment. "What exactly are you carrying that makes you worth such a dedicated pursuit?" "It can't just be the shuttle." Lyra and Kale exchanged glances, silently debating how much to reveal. "Information," Lyra finally said. "Evidence of large-scale radiation poisoning of workers at the Eastern Mining Complex on Xylos. Proof the conglomerate has been covering up unsafe conditions resulting in thousands of deaths." Reed's cybernetic eye whirred as he processed this. Valuable information, certainly, but hardly unique. The conglomerate's atrocities are well documented, if rarely prosecuted. There's more, Cale added, deciding transparency was their best option. The warden leading the pursuit, Krell, has personal involvement in the cover-up. And I was a high-ranking enforcer with intimate knowledge of conglomerate security protocols. Understanding dawned on Reed's face. Not just the information then, but the messengers. A defector of your rank is a significant propaganda risk. He stood, decision apparently made. I believe I can arrange transport to Varys. Not comfortable or direct, but secure. A cargo freighter that runs regular shipments through that sector. Its captain owes me several favors. When does it depart? Lyra asked. 12 hours, Reed replied. Time enough for rest and preparation. He glanced at the tactical display again, and hopefully before significant conglomerate reinforcements arrive. He left them to rest in the medical facility, promising to return with more details about their transport arrangements. When they were alone, Lyra turned to Cale, her expression serious. Are you certain about Varys? She asked quietly. The Resistance will welcome me, but you'll face suspicion, possibly worse. Former enforcers aren't typically trusted, regardless of recent actions. Cale considered this, the reality of his new existence settling heavily upon him. I made my choice in the pit, he finally said. Everything since then has simply been following that path to its logical conclusion. Lyra studied him intently. And if that path leads to fighting against those you once served alongside, people who, like you, may simply be trying to protect their families. It was a question Cale had asked himself repeatedly since their escape. The answer still didn't come easily, but it came with certainty. Then I'll fight with the knowledge and compassion that experience brings, he said. The conglomerate maintains control through lies and fear. I live those lies and force that fear. Perhaps that makes me uniquely qualified to help dismantle it. Something like approval flickered in Lyra's eyes. Marileth indeed, she murmured. Rest while you can. I suspect opportunities for it will be scarce in the days ahead. The hours passed in relative calm. They took turns sleeping, neither willing to be completely vulnerable in this unfamiliar environment despite Reed's apparent goodwill. Cale used the time to familiarize himself with the outpost's layout through observation and casual conversation with medical staff, a soldier's habit of always planning escape routes. Reed returned as promised, accompanied by a grizzled woman with captain's insignia on her weather jacket. This is Captain Vega, he introduced. She'll be your transport to Varys. Captain Vega assessed them with shrewd eyes that had clearly seen much of the galaxy's harshness. My ship leaves in 2 hours, she stated without preamble. We're hauling industrial components, which means plenty of cargo containers suitable for hiding stowaways. Not comfortable, but secure. The conglomerate will almost certainly scan for life signs, Cale pointed out. Vega smiled thinly. My cargo regularly includes items that interfere with standard scanning technology. An unfortunate malfunction that works to our mutual benefit. The details were arranged quickly and efficiently. They would be transported to Vega's freighter shortly before departure, concealed among legitimate cargo. Once beyond Meridian's defensive perimeter, they would navigate a complex route designed to throw off potential pursuit before eventually reaching Varys Station. As preparations continued, Reed pulled Cale aside. A word, he said, leading him to a small observation area overlooking the hangar where their stolen shuttle was being systematically stripped of valuable technology and identifying markers. You're not what I expected from a conglomerate enforcer, Reed remarked, studying Cale with his cybernetic eye. I'm not an enforcer anymore, Cale replied evenly. No, you're something more dangerous. A man who's remembered his conscience, Reed said. The conglomerate can defend against many things, but moral awakening among its own ranks terrifies them more than any external threat. He turned fully to face Cale. Lyra Navarre is important to the Resistance. Her skills, her knowledge, her lineage. The daughter of Mira, Navarre carries significant symbolic weight. Understand, Cale nodded. I'll ensure she reaches Varys safely. That's not my point, Reed said, surprising him. My point is that you may be equally valuable, though in different ways. An enforcer who broke his conditioning, who remembered honor even in the pit. That's a powerful symbol, too. Reed's cybernetic hand touched his own scarred face. I was a conglomerate security officer before Mira Navar saved me. My defection helped dozens of others find the courage to question their loyalties. Yours could inspire hundreds. The observation caught Cale off guard. He had been thinking of himself as Lyra's protector, a soldier with useful skills but tainted by his past. The idea that his defection itself might have value was unexpected. Consider it, Reed said, clapping him on the shoulder. The Resistance needs symbols as much as it needs soldiers. They returned to find Lyra already preparing for departure, gathering the few supplies Reed had provided: clean clothing, basic weapons, emergency rations. The outpost klaxon suddenly blared, causing everyone to freeze. Proximity alert, Reed explained, checking his communications device. Additional conglomerate vessels have entered the system. Cruiser class. We've just run out of time. Captain Vega swore colorfully. We need a launch now, before they establish a blockade. Go, Reed urged, already mobilizing his security teams. We'll create a distraction to cover your departure. The cargo is already aboard. They moved swiftly through the outpost's corridors, now buzzing with defensive preparations. Meridian's residents were clearly practiced in responding to conglomerate threats, moving with purposeful efficiency rather than panic. Captain Vega's freighter waited in a separate docking bay, a bulky, utilitarian vessel with none of the stolen shuttle's elegance, but considerably more anonymity. Its engines were already cycling up, crew members making final preparations for immediate departure. This way, Vega directed, leading them to the cargo hold where several containers stood ready. One had been modified with concealed life support and minimal comforts. Get in. Once we're clear of the immediate danger zone, I'll let you out. Until then, complete silence is essential. As they climbed into the cramped container, Reed appeared for a final farewell. The distraction is set. We're detonating some expired mining charges near the outer defensive perimeter. Should create enough sensor interference to mask your launch signature. He grasped Lyra's hand firmly. Your mother would be proud. When you reach the Resistance leadership, tell them Meridian stands ready to increase support. To Cale, he simply nodded respectfully. Remember what I said. Symbols matter. The container sealed with a hiss of pressurization. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by a small emergency light casting everything in dim red. Lyra and Cale sat shoulder to shoulder in the confined space as the container was secured for transport. The freighter's engines built from a rumble to a roar, vibrations cascading through the hull as launch procedures initiated. Through the container walls, muffled announcements and mechanical sounds created a symphony of departure. This is really happening, Lyra said softly, her voice barely audible over the ship's preparations. We're actually getting away. Cale felt the weight of her words, the enormity of what they'd accomplished and what still lay ahead. They had escaped the pit, evaded immediate capture, secured transport off-world, and were now embarking for a Resistance stronghold. Each step improbable, yet here they were. We're getting away, he agreed, finding her hand in the dim light and clasping it firmly. Together, the freighter lurched as it disengaged from the docking clamps. Through the small ventilation port in their container, Cale caught a glimpse of Meridian Outpost falling away beneath them, its defensive systems already engaging the approaching conglomerate vessels. Explosions blossomed silently in the vacuum of space, Reed's distraction drawing attention away from their departure. The freighter accelerated hard, pushing them back against the container walls as Captain Vega executed her escape trajectory. A series of shuddering impacts suggested weapons fire near the freighter, but not direct hits. The evasive maneuvers grew more violent, containers shifting and groaning around them as the ship pushed its structural integrity to the limits. Then, abruptly, smoothness again, the distinctive sensation of a successful jump to faster-than-light travel. They had escaped the immediate danger zone. In the red-tinged darkness of their temporary prison, Lyra released a breath she'd been holding. "First step complete," she whispered. Cale nodded, thinking of all they'd been through and all that awaited them. From the pit of judgment to the vast possibilities of freedom, their journey had only just begun. The conglomerate would continue hunting them, bringing its immense resources to bear on their capture or elimination. The path ahead would be dangerous, uncertain, filled with challenges neither of them could yet imagine. But in this moment, sitting beside a woman whose courage had awakened his own, Cale felt something he had thought lost forever: hope. Not the fragile hope of survival that had sustained him through years of compromise, but the stronger hope of purpose, of fighting for something worthy rather than against his own conscience. "No more chains," he said softly, echoing an old Hilaran saying. "No more masters." Lyra completed the phrase, her voice warm with shared heritage and newfound connection. "Only the flame we've kindled together, burning bright amid the ashes." The freighter carried them onward through the darkness of space toward Varus Station, and whatever future they would forge there. Not safety, certainly, but purpose. Not peace, but the chance to fight for something greater than themselves. Not home, but perhaps, in time, the chance to reclaim one. Together, they had shattered the chains of oppression and begun a journey that would change not only their lives, but potentially countless others. The conglomerate's power remained vast and terrible, but in small acts of defiance, a shattered whip, a dramatic rescue, a daring escape, lay the seeds of its eventual downfall. As the freighter carried them through the void toward uncertainty and possibility in equal measure, Cale and Lyra sat side by side in their temporary shelter, bound not by chains of subjugation, but by choice, by shared purpose, and by the beginning flames of something that might, given time and nurturing, grow into love. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of danger and promise. But for now, in this moment of hard-won freedom, they allowed themselves to simply breathe, to exist without the weight of oppression and a hope for a future worth fighting for.